Okay, I think we'll make a start, everybody. Okay, first of all, thank you for attending and welcome to the Corporate Parenting Committee meeting today. Just a couple of points before we start. Please keep your camera and your microphone off throughout the meeting unless you wish to speak. You can indicate that you wish to speak through raising your hand or by putting it in the chat, and I will try and keep a tab of all of those, or I'm sure Helen will be helping me as well with that. When you do speak, if you could put on your camera and unmute obviously at that time so that we can see you while you're speaking, if you're able to. So we'll start with part one, matters to be considered with the public and press present. First of all, do we have any apologies for absence?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I've received apologies from Councillor Josh Saunders, and Councillor Mick Warren is going to be present but may have to leave early, and Councillor Moran is substituting for Councillor Buttrill today. Thank you.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you. Welcome, Councillor Moran. Item 2, declarations of interest. Does anybody have any declarations of interest on any of the items on the agenda? It doesn't look like there are. Okay, great. So we'll move on. Item 3, the minutes of the previous meeting. Now, I've just got one point, although it is recognised in the body of the report. Thank you for saying that I was there and dialed in, but couldn't chair. But could you also add me, please, to the present list as well, which I'm not in at the top. If that's okay. And has anybody else got any issues with the minutes? Okay, well, I'm going to take a sense of the meeting. If everybody could, if anybody doesn't agree to adopt these minutes as a true and accurate record of the last meeting, please raise your hand or say so in the chat. Okay, thank you. So the minutes are adopted. Thank you very much. Okay, the next item, the Corporate Parenting Annual Report. So this report is an opportunity to, sorry, I've got somebody knocking at the door, I'm a bit distracted, to see what the Corporate Parenting Committee have been doing over the year up to the end of March 2020. I hope you've all had a chance to read it. It's a really, really positive report. It highlights the successes that have been achieved in delivering positive outcomes for our children and young people, and also the next steps in the journey, which are really important parts, obviously, of this report. It's a great answer to, you know, when you consider we had Ofsted last year, and you can already see, running through this report, how much progress has been made, the fantastic joined up working that's been going on. I'm particularly pleased to see that the voice of the young people is very clear in this report. It runs through everything that we do, which is brilliant, and it was considered a strength by Ofsted. Also, it's also good to see how the new Together vision for children is also a massive part of this, and the implementation of that going forward is going to be a real strength, I think, for all of children's services. A couple of things to highlight in the education. We've had fantastic attendance, and throughout the COVID pandemic, that's managed to stay strong. So really great work from the education team there. Also, I know there have been some problems with care leavers and NEET, but we can see now that that's improving, and that's great work as well. And a lot of the next steps, when I'm reading through it, have already, you know, there's already a lot of progress made towards ticking those off as well. So it's a great report, and thank you to those who have put in all the work to make this progress, and to produce a report. There's also the engagement options for members of the Corporate Parenting Committee. Now, I understand that obviously this has been not anywhere near as well, we haven't managed to fulfil some of those things because of the COVID pandemic, but I believe now that most people have now signed up and they know what they're doing. Hopefully when we come out, you know, in the spring, we'll be back to doing frontline visits and doing a lot more work with our children and young people. If you still haven't done the various things that you need to do, like your DBS and pen profiles, etc., just a reminder to get those done so that we are ready for when we get to start doing these face-to-face meetings again. So anybody wish to speak on this item, or any comments or questions?
I'd just like to say, if that's all right, how
Yes.
well they've done with their exam results. On page 9 of the report, it says some of the results are above the national average, which is fantastic, isn't it, for children that have had a difficult path. So I just think congratulations to the kids, but also to those who were teaching them. Yeah. So
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you for that, Councillor Boorman. That's absolutely true. I know that, you know, exams were obviously been difficult last year, but it's just shown that people have really managed to get some good results despite all of the difficulties that we were facing. So that's really good news, and we hope that can continue. Obviously, it's a little bit up in the air what's going to happen with exams next year, but we know that our cared for children are getting all the support they need through the virtual school, etc. So that's really great news. Anybody else have any comments about? Let me just have a look. Somebody's raised their hand. Mark Balfour.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So I would agree. I think the report paints an accurate picture of what's gone on, and some brilliant stuff that's happened as part of corporate parenting. I just wanted to check out with Helen, just to remind me more than anything, in terms of do we take this to cabinet? Is it something that goes to cabinet? Because I just think the work of the committee and the work that all our staff do with our young people, I think just needs to get that recognition. But I can't remember, Helen, whether we've taken it before.
I will double check with Paul Mountford and find out what happened last time. But yeah, I agree. It's certainly something that should be going.
Yeah, thank you.
Can I, suggest that the next item on the agenda, which is actually the corporate parenting update report, which actually includes the annual report, that might be a better paper, and I think that could come to cabinet, which has the update in it. Which, as I say, also, I've got 2 copies of the annual report because it's included in that report as well. If that might be easier. Okay, Councillor Moran.
Yes, Chair. I can't remember, Chair, if it goes to children and family scrutiny or not. I don't know if Mark knows about that or not. I wonder if it goes to Joss's committee, which I'm on as well.
The update report does, I believe, yeah.
I think it does do a bit of a journey around, actually, because I think it goes to scrutiny. I think we've taken it in the past to Health and Wellbeing Board, but I'm pretty sure we've taken it to cabinet in the past. I think it's been such an unusual year that I can't recall whether it did or not. But I'm pretty sure we did, and I think it's important for lots of reasons, really. But I do think that the annual report part of it, I think, is definitely one to go. But yeah, Councillor Moran's right. It does go to scrutiny as well.
Okay. Right. Thank you. Any more? Anybody else wishing to speak on that? Do you still have a hand up? Councillor Moran, did you want to speak again, or is that just left your hand up? I think it's a legacy hand.
Yes, I'll take it down. Thank you, Chair.
It is quite strange, when you're chairing a meeting like this, and you've asked you all
I'll use
to
the chat function next.
Yeah, all your keep all your cameras off. I'm sort of looking at a blank screen, really. It's easy to feel that you're the only person in the meeting when you can't see anybody else. Okay, so So our actions are, do we need to vote on that, Helen, or to accept that? Let me just find it. It's a note.
Yes. Yeah, I think it's just to receive a note.
Receive and note. Am I okay taking a sense of the meeting, or should I do a roll call? No.
You can take a sense for that.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So if everybody is happy to accept the corporate parenting annual report, if you're not happy or you have any more any other issues with it, please could you make yourself known. Okay, thank you. So that is noted and received. Okay, on to agenda item 5, which is the corporate parenting update report. Now this obviously contains the annual report, but there was a lot of other issues in here. So is this going to be you, Kerry? You introducing this one?
That's me, Chair. Thank you.
Brilliant, lovely. Over to you.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's great to be back at Corporate Parenting Committee, and I think it's lovely to start the meeting with the reflections of the 12 months where we weren't talking about COVID and all the achievements for our children and young people. So it's lovely to kind of start there. I'm going to invite a presentation to be shared on the screen now. So I don't know if Lauren, you can help me with that, popping that up. And this will be this is a presentation around our Q2 performance. So, you know, right in the thick of the pandemic, July to September, and we are because of the way that we've been collecting data and pressures on the system, this is in effect how you would have previously received scorecard information, but we're trying to do it in an interactive way through a presentation. This is the second time you will have seen this. So it's just a couple of slides, and I'll try not to duplicate, and I'll leave education for the expert in the room, Laura Rogerson, later on the agenda. So if we could just go to the next slide, Lauren, please. So yeah, this is just a very quick outline. I've spoken to you before in much detail and with much empathy and admiration for our frontline practitioners, really, about the way that they've adapted very, very quickly to the challenges that have been presented to them in the pandemic. But I think it's always really important and powerful to start to make that point. But if we move into the next slide, and I'll talk a little bit about what all this has meant in terms of how we've been able to maintain our duties towards our children and young people. So as you will see, our service continued to operate. We still were required to safeguard children by providing care to them. So an additional 32 children became cared for in that Q2 period, resulting in an overall population of 537 and a gradual increase again in the number of care leavers that are returning to us for some additional support. What is really positive to note, in Q2 we were between the parameters of late 70s, mid 80s in terms of our statutory obligations to comply and visit children in a particular time frame, and I am pleased to report that the current position remains the same. So as of today, we're still within that parameter bracket, and the remaining children that we don't see in a face-to-face capacity is because we've risk assessed those individual situations as presenting too high of a COVID risk for us to go into those settings, and therefore we do virtual sort of arrangements. You'll know about statutory reviews for our children and young people and how important they are as the mechanism ensuring that their plans are progressed in a timely way. Really pleasing to see that for 98% of children, those reviews were still happening. And similarly with pathway plans, which is the mechanism for our older young people and care leavers, between 97, 97, 97 and 99%. So a good news story from a numbers perspective is what I'm highlighting there. If we could just move on to the next one, Lauren. I did say that I'd leave education to Laura. There's a very quick. Sorry, Helen, is that a question for me? Oh, sorry, it's not. It was the previous item. So yeah, there's a little bit of information in there really about how our care leavers were experiencing NEAT in Q2, but I think we can talk more about that in terms of how that's moved on as we move through the agenda today. So if we could go on to health, Lauren, which is the next slide. Again, really positive reports to share that our service and the way that we have responded to the health needs of our children and young people has not been compromised. 81% of requests for health assessments when children become cared for being completed within timeframes, and then 54% of those actual assessments taking place in person within that statutory timeframe of 20 days. We understand and we very, very closely monitor those children, and Sean McFarland, our designated nurse, is great at making sure that we don't miss opportunities for children to attend those appointments, but coordination of that can sometimes be difficult. There's a lot going on when children come into care. Review health assessments, which are either 6 months or 12 months, so sitting at 83% again, which is positive. And there's an interesting observation there about how we are noticing changes in the emotional well-being of our children and young people. So an SDQ is a questionnaire that we use that can be completed by a young person themselves, their carer, their educational setting, and it generates a score. So it's scientifically based rather than kind of relationally, but it's an indicator of maybe how our children and young people are experiencing the world around them. And so what we see there is 74%, a score below 70. What that means is that we are knowing now that we need to provide some additional support, but that'll be no surprise to members of the committee. I've spoken about mental health and wellbeing throughout the pandemic at length, really. So if we could just move on to the next slide, Lauren. So in terms of permanency planning, massively important to our children and young people. It's crucial that we support them to achieve permanency as soon as possible. And what we have talked about many times in Corporate Parenting Committee is the impact of COVID-19. And those areas remain to be the case for in Q2. So only having 2 children adopted. Now that has improved, and for those of you with a really fine eye for detail, you will have already picked up in the update report that there's a number missing out of the report at 8.2. It says that so many children have been adopted, and I can confirm that there's been 5 adoptions this year. So it is slowly moving through the system. But if we compare that to this time last year, we're about 1/3 of where we normally were. So when I'm talking about permanency not being achieved, and that's because the capacity within the court arena is being prioritised for children that are new into care, and those safeguarding measures being put in place. So we have a plan around that, but inevitably there's some delay. I'm also raising here the challenge that we've got around achieving permanency at the second review. So what that means is that when children come into care, the regulations and the guidance tell us that it's really best practice to have a plan sorted out for them by 4 months of them being in care, because we know that drifting delay is not a good thing for them. And what you'll see there is that 24 children came into care, but that permanency plan at 4 months was only achieved for 4 young people. Again, that is evidence of the fact that court-directed assessments were taking longer because of experts being available, the ability to be out and seeing families creating additional delay, coupled with court capacity, has really meant that there's been a consequence for children in that regard. And then there's some data in there around missings and placement stability. No real outliers there in terms of a business as usual approach, but it is necessary to just kind of remember that missing and placement instability are 2 indicators for us that tell us how well we're doing when we're caring for our children and young people. So it's necessary to raise that and put that on your profile. If we could go to the next slide, Lauren. So yeah, this is just a little bit from me in terms of reflections at the end of Q2. I'm always going to be on these calls championing for my frontline practitioners and how hard they've worked through that pandemic, really. And what I'll do now, Lauren, if you want to take that down, is I'll just make some observations against the corporate parenting update report that was in the pack today. So I won't read it verbatim because you've obviously had access to that document. But what's really important to note is that the coronavirus regulations that were implemented early on in the pandemic were reviewed on the 25th of September, and many of the variations to the regulations that they put in place lapsed, which was giving a very clear message to local authorities that you now need to get back to a business as usual model. We understand enough about the virus for your staff to be able to undertake your duties safely, and they just kept a very few regulations in place, which were about approvals of prospective adopters and foster carers, because of the impact of demand on other services. So what that means is that if I wanted to apply to be a foster carer, I would have all kinds of checks and balances that would reassure local authorities that I was safe. That involves police checks, that involves checks with local authorities. And what the DfE have recognised is that that is going to take longer purely because of the demands upon the system. So they're giving the local authorities an extended period of time in terms of how to do that. And crucially, the ability to risk assess situations and to defensively and through assessment undertake virtual visits and face-to-face visits if COVID-specific risks are in place. So again, when I wrote this report, this was the second lockdown. I'm still curious about whether we'll get updated guidance as we go through the next couple of months, and certainly as we transition out of this lockdown, but as of yet we've had no changes to those additional regulations, and they are due to lapse on the 31st of March. So I'll bring a further update to committee in January. I've spoken about how proud I am of the service for continuing to get out and visit our children and young people. We're still up at kind of 79, 86%. The NEAT challenge that Councillor Faval talked about in the annual report was a real worry for me at the beginning of the pandemic, knowing about the impact on the economy and, you know, where do my care leavers fit into all of that and how can they be prioritised. As a service, we have invested in the NEAT programme, which is happening as we speak. 8 young people that have been out of education, training and employment for some time are now safely in COVID bubbles and are engaging in a social welfare project that will not only enhance their future potential, but also give back to the community. So that's really, really positive. And we've also got a small commission with Voice for Children. A chap called Liam Hill, he's a Cheshire East care leaver himself and set up with us a social enterprise business a few years ago now, and he's mentoring our care leavers too. Do you know, they've been wonderfully creative and come up with all kinds of online businesses and self-employment ideas. And what we're trying to do is give them avenues to achieve their goals without ring fencing them into local authority apprenticeships or internships. We're trying to have a real varied offer, and that now is seeing 2 young people actually with their own small businesses, and we're hoping to support them to upscale that. So it's a bit like sort of every little helps with this regard. At 8.1 in the report, I talk about a new resource and permanency panel. So like in the presentation, I'd raised the issue around achieving permanency at second review for children and young people and needing that real strategic focus on how we can achieve that for them, bearing in mind that we know we've got some challenges around sufficiency. We know that we've got more children placed externally with foster carers than we have internally, and what that really needed was a strategic plan around how we're going to maximise the resource that we've got available, but also match children very carefully to their carers to avoid placement breakdown in the future. So that panel now is chaired every week by heads of service across the team and is already starting to see impact in terms of an example of that would be children that are living with external foster carers but are not matched, because that would be their route to permanency, picking up on those children and finding the resource and the time and the capacity within our fostering panels to make sure that those children know when their matches are going to happen, because that's what's important to them. So I'm positive about the impacts of that, and I'll report more of that in January. Similarly with permanence, at 8.3 I've referenced that we've had a small number of children that have been discharged from care. So what that means is that their right to family life without the intrusion of a local authority is now back in their hands, which is fantastic. The work involved in getting children out of care as complicated as when children come into care, and in the context of the courts and the capacity that they've had to juggle with, it's a real credit to the service that they've been able to achieve that for those children. I've also referenced in the report about the fact that we've been able to recommission our 16+ supported accommodation offer. So went through quite a rigorous retendering process in terms of what we need, reflections from Ofsted last year, and have I'm really excited. We've got a real strong offer from a provider in the north and a provider in the south that will mean that we will have really excellent quality care and support for our 16 and 17-year-olds as they're transitioning through that very tricky period in life, much earlier than children who will be living in our own families, and making sure that their preparation for independence is as thorough as it possibly could be. So again, once we've moved through to mobilisation in January, I'll be able to bring more information about that. And then a final few points. So thank you to all of the members who've been really engaged in the frontline member visit activity. I know we've had various different meetings, and hopefully those that have been able to come forward are now better prepared to go into the various forums, and that will have an impact when we come back to these meetings, because you will be able to say to me, you know, well, Kerry, I saw this, or I heard a social worker talking about this, and that's the kind of check and challenge that we want. From a fostering perspective, really positive news to share that we've currently got 14 foster carers that we are assessing as being potential carers for our children and young people. That's the highest number that we've had for some time, and you'll know that we've moved from our fostering relationship with our regional partners into our own strategy. And I don't know, for those of you that are obviously Cheshire East residents, I'm hoping that you've all had a leaflet through your door as well. So there's evidence to you that the campaign is having an effect, and 3 of those inquiries back in are as a direct result of that leaflet drop. So that's really positive. A more difficult piece of news for me to share with you, really, and finally from me, is around our bespoke children's homes. I know, Councillor Warren, you've been keen and are linked up to go and undertake some work in visiting our homes when that's safe to do so. But our 4th children's home to be Ofsted registered in Macclesfield, unfortunately, the matching of the children and young people and the skills of the staff team, long and short, resulted in us needing to temporarily move those children into different accommodation because we didn't have the staff team in place to be able to run the home. It continues to be an Ofsted registered home, and we are working with the provider to get that home remobilised, and we are going to jointly recruit for the registered manager so that we can be sure about the skills set that's going to be in place. But sadly, for 2 young people that we brought back to the borough because their care plans assessed that was right for them, there was an unplanned change for them. And just to offer that reassurance that they have been my priority, ensuring that they don't feel like this is their fault, and that we need to take ownership for what happened there. But I'm not going to kind of quantify what happened there to COVID. Setting up children's homes is a really complex piece of work, and we've done quite a lot of that during a very exceptionally tricky time. And we're very keen to learn from that so that we don't experience that, and our children and young people don't experience that going forward. So yeah, I'm going to stop talking now because that was quite a lot, and I'm sure there'll be some questions, so thank you.
Thanks very much, Kerry. And I should have said before you started speaking, just from all of us here on the Corporate Parenting, congratulations on your appointment to Director of Children's Social Care. And I know that you're going to be brilliant in the role.
Thank you, Catherine.
So yeah, thanks for that really comprehensive sort of introduction to that. I've just got a couple of questions. If anybody else wants, we are here. We are supposed to be providing support and challenge on these reports. So if anybody has any questions, please do raise your hand. With regard to the, I'll start with what you talked about last first, that the Macclesfield bespoke home. What timescale are we talking about for it actually to be back in play again?
So,
estimate?
Yeah, so it's still registered, so we haven't lost our Ofsted registration, which will significantly impact on our ability to remobilise. We've got interviews set up within the next 2 weeks for the registered manager. Now, you can't, from an Ofsted regulatory perspective, you can't open the doors, if you like, unless you've got a registered manager and a staff team in place. What we are already doing is thinking about which children we might want to reintroduce to that home, and for the children that have lived there previously, it wouldn't be right for them, and it's not their wishes and feelings to return. And we need to totally recognise that new staffing team sometimes means that we maybe don't need to place our most complex children there, and that we need to grow and develop the service. So my ambition is that by January, Catherine, we would have children back living in the home. But of course, what we don't want to do is rush that, because, you know, the consequences are for children.
Yeah,
not
absolutely.
for us. Yeah.
So the two young people that were there, did they go back to where they were before, or have they been placed elsewhere now?
No, so there was a young lady that lived there, and she's actually moved to one of the other homes that belong to the same organisation. So there's some continuity of care for her. The young man that lived there, because of his level of need, we needed quite a specialist environment for him. And so we identified a placement for him in Chester, so not too far away, so still close to his family, that's been at Ofsted rated as outstanding for 10 years. So in terms of the quality of care, you know, we needed to be as sure as we could be that the offer that we gave him was a really, really good one. So he's moved out there, and actually he's closer to that period of transition. The likely plan for him will be that he is now supported to move through to independence. We don't want to be building in moves for him for move's sake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. Thanks for that. OK, I've got a question from Councillor Ballman and then Councillor Buckley. Carol.
Hi. What I wanted to know about, it just seems so annoying that the courts hold up the really good work that you do. And I just want, is it completely out of our control? It's saying that there are still delays in the courts that are impacting, obviously, on progress with some children.
So you're absolutely right to raise the question. It's the second time that I've spoke about this issue today, actually, Councillor Ballman. It was our chief exec that was really interested in what else we could do to influence capacity within the court. So I sit at the local family justice board, where these issues are raised in terms of the impact, so evidencing the impact for children and young people, and what else that we can do to be able to move the system forward, really. What I would say is that whilst there are still delays, if we'd have done nothing back in June, we wouldn't have achieved what we have achieved. So what we are able to do is to support care planning for children where their risk is very real, if you see what I mean. So coming in from edge of care into care, those children are being safeguarded through the court process, which is a real positive. However, that doesn't mean that children at the other end of the system in adoption placements aren't equally as important in terms of their outcomes. So we've been talking today about various different things that we can do internally in terms of putting that challenge back into the court and looking at capacity and how we use our resource, but as importantly, influencing the local family justice board across that Pan Cheshire footprint to make sure that the accountability for those delays is felt by both the court and the local authority, and therefore we do something about that moving forward. Yeah.
Right. Oh, that's good.
And it is starting to move again, isn't it?
Yeah.
The things are picking up. Absolutely.
I did have just another point on fostering. I'm supposed to be on the fostering panel, and I've seen those various dates when they've been meeting. Should I have been going to those, or should I have received invitations to those, or what do I do? Do I wait?
Do you want me? I'll check that out for you, Councillor
Yes,
Ballman.
thank you.
Yeah, I'll come back to you.
I looked at those dates and thought, oh goodness, I've missed something.
Don't worry.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Buckley.
Hi. Couple of things. Earlier on in the report, you said something about the plans not moving on as quickly because of the, problems getting the children's appointments or young people's appointments. Has that impacted on them, or if they were in new homes, have they been feeling reasonably settled anyway, despite not being able to get to see the doctors or nurses or whatever they were meant to be seeing?
So just to be clear, Councillor Buckley, is this in relation to the health appointments you're
yes,
talking about here?
That, all the appointments of everything are a bit hampered, but because they've been with placements, have they felt reasonably happy and secure despite the fact that things have been sluggish?
Yeah, so what I can confidently say about the initial health assessment process is that it's a statutory requirement, so we have to do it as a local authority, and it's the right thing to do, because children that have experienced abuse and neglect, responding to their health needs is probably one of the most important things that we need to do.
Yeah.
Once we've eliminated the risks that have been presented at home or in other settings. So what happens in sort of real time is the court make the decision that a child needs to become accommodated, and then the child then becomes cared for and we find them a home. And from the day that happens, we then have 7 days to make a notification to our health colleagues to say, this child is in care, they now need a health assessment. Please, can you process this? And there's paperwork and such involved. What happens in between that, so that notification being sent in and the appointment being offered, is that our systems get updated in terms of the addresses of where children are living. That needs to be updated with health. Family time arrangements start to happen. So foster carers and children become very busy in those early weeks, and that, Councillor Buckley, is often where we see our percentages of appointments within a 20-day timescale become effective. It's less about our health colleagues being unavailable to offer the clinical appointment. It's more around foster carers availability. Sometimes children come into care but live with family. They don't really understand what is this appointment? Why do I need to be there? Sometimes travel can be an issue. And so that's the work that the Help Me to Be Healthy work stream is working on, that Sean McFarland focuses on. So there's no risk to the child, and any immediate health risk would be dealt with outside of this process. So this is more of a...
So much thinking about the health, I was thinking they're not feeling unsettled, but it's more you guys that are feeling, oh, we're behind on this. The young people are in their homes and feeling cared for. It's just that, like everything else during COVID, even our own health appointments, everything's been trickier, hasn't it? But it hasn't had a negative. I'm not on about the health, I'm on about more the emotional feel of children. They're not feeling agitated about it as such.
I think, Councillor Buckley, if I'm really transparent, and I say this through working with children, young people for years, one of the most significant episodes in their life will be to be removed from their birth family into care. So yes, they will be feeling unsettled and agitated and unsure and uncertain at that time.
They're not feeling more so, that's what I meant. It hasn't impacted on their emotions overly. I don't think I'm making myself very clear because I'm on Zoom.
I wonder if we could maybe take this back to our shadow committee as a question to come back next time.
Yeah, that's fine. I think it was, and the other thing, Macclesfield, were the young people in there, I take it one of them was very complex needs, and that might have contributed to what went wrong.
Yeah, I mean, and we know, don't we? I talk about this all the time. These are our children, and they're very complex journeys, and we have to have the right skills to be able to meet their needs. But I'm happy to take that to our shadow committee and bring something back for next time.
I don't need. No, I'm fine with it, I think.
Okay, thank you.
I think it's good though to have that, to have a focus, when we do have the young people there, to have questions that come from the Corporate Parenting Committee, just to see how they are feeling, and we can feedback with that, can't we? Okay, just one more just point from me. Obviously, we talked about an awful lot of visits and virtual visits, and you've managed to keep that contact up, which is brilliant. I believe I remember talking to someone. I don't know if it was with yourself, Kerry, or Jackie, that a lot of the young people have engaged better with the virtual visits. So if going forward, even when we are out of the whole lockdown thing, is there going to be a feeling that will continue for some people? Because if young people really engage better with a virtual visit, that might be something that we can continue with. Is that part of the plan?
Yeah, absolutely. We've seen much stronger relationships being formed. I think children can sometimes feel like it's difficult when they're in a room with somebody they don't know or they're developing a relationship with, whereas they're finding it much easier on a social platform to develop that. What we're not going to ever get away from is our statutory duty to see children in person, because that's part of the safeguarding requirement. But I vision in my mind a combination of the two that works for, you know, we inevitably it's worked well. Why would we not continue to do it? Would be my response to that. So yeah,
brilliant, that's great. Okay, right, the Councillor Boorman and Buckley, your hands are still up. I assume you don't wish to speak again. No, okay. That's all right, no problem. Right, does anybody else have any comments on that on the report? No, okay. So we're asked to note the contents, and we provided some challenge in terms of support. I think it's a brilliant report, and again, it's great to see all the work that's going on. It's really clear throughout what's, you know, all the good work that's going on, and again, particularly with the voice of the child is clear in this report as well. So I'll just take a sense of the room. Are we all happy to note that report? If anybody is not, can they please raise their hand now? Okay, thank you very much. That report is noted. Okay, on to item 6, which I believe is the education. Yeah. Okay, so the virtual school head teachers annual report, which is in your pack. So I believe that will be Laura Rogerson, who is now here. So over to you, Laura.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you everybody for inviting me along to come and present. Hopefully you've had an opportunity to read through the report. I have put a short presentation together just to pick out some key points. I know it's quite a long report. Obviously, with it being the annual head teacher report, I want to try and capture as much as possible in there. So I've just put together some key points really to go through. Thanks, Lauren.
Sorry, I'm not sure if people can see that now or not.
Not yet, we can just see your screen.
Bear with me a minute.
I can hear you wildly clicking. It doesn't matter how hard you click it, it's not going to make any difference.
That's great, thank you. So I've tried to develop the head teachers report over the last couple of years, from going from kind of pages and pages of data to actually try and bring it to life a little bit about the work that we are doing across the virtual school, and you know, linking with our partners and social care. So hopefully you'll see from the report we've putting in the case studies and the quotes and how we've kind of developed the design of that it really kind of brings it to life a little bit, and that little bit of an impact. We obviously support the virtual school, support all of our cared for children with their education and progress. During this year as well, I've taken on an interim role as head of service for SEND. So we've also appointed an interim deputy head to support across the team with some of the operational aspects across the virtual school. With the report, what I've tried to do is highlight with that, bringing it to life of that and so what. So when we did the last our inspection, we came out with some really positive comments, but some of the aspects of areas development was that, and so what does it mean to our children and young people? What is the impact and what is the difference that's made? And that's where I've tried to capture it as part of some of those case studies and some of the information that I've put in there with regards to, you know, this is the intervention that we've put in, and therefore this is then the impact that has then made on our children. Thanks, Lauren. So there's been an increase in our core staffing as well, again, to further support. So we've now got 2 specialist attendance officers to increase the support overall attendance and reduce our persistent absence figures. We've got 3 new learning mentors, one for each locality, who are offering support with individual children and young people and supporting our schools to actually upskill staff. And we've now also got a dedicated post-16 learning mentor who's got a specific role around education, employment and training and reducing our NEET figures. Course staffing, or some of our course staffing, is funded through pupil premium. Thanks, Lauren. So key focus areas, again, probably no surprise, with regards to progress and attainment, attendance and exclusions, full engagement, aspirational pathways, reducing our NEETs, preparing for adulthood. Anything that you would see in a normal school, that's our aspirations and our challenge that we want to put forward to make sure we're supporting our children. Thank you, Lauren. So during COVID, we continue to support with regards to education. Some of our children still went in and accessed education on site, but you know, a large number were doing remote learning at home. But throughout the period of time, we had our advisors making constant communication with the families and young people to make sure they were supported. We continue to run PEPs in particular for those young people that were in transition year groups, so year 6 into year 7, all early years starting school, and year 11 into post 16. We continue to do training virtually with our designated teachers to look at what support we could offer. We carried on and were part of, throughout the period, I've been part of the education recovery and the return to schools. On pages 13 and 14, what I've done is highlighted interventions and impact of those interventions, so things such as 1-minute guides that we created with links to educational activities, emotional and well-being, and some support and contact that we've made throughout the summer in order to support with that return to school. So the advisors did make contact with all of our young people to ensure that they had any fears were alleviated, any support that needed to put into place so that they were ready to return in September. So just an overview of our cohorts, just for that understanding. Obviously, this changes all the time as we get new children into care and leaving care. But in total, we've got 546 from when I did the report, 172 different schools in 31 different local authorities. So we're supporting the children across all of those areas. 79% attend Cheshire East schools, the others are obviously out of the local authority. But we still continue to support those exactly the same as those children that are within Cheshire East schools. Pupil premium, just wanted to cover with regards to the funding that we receive. We spend our funding directly with our young people on group teaching, support to enhance social emotional skills. Specifically this year, we've put an awful lot, which probably is no surprise, into tutoring and remote learning to actually support with the gaps in learning and where they might need that extra support during that period of time. We've also funded an RSPCA programme, which is specifically only for cared for children, and we have a number of our young people that go over to the RSPCA. Obviously, at the moment, they're not able to do that, but they go over to the RSPCA and actually work alongside the staff there to actually care for the animals, and that's part of their school day as part of bespoke packages. We've supported with access to recreational activities, and we've also supported with regards to our post-16 and, as Kerry said earlier, around the NEET programme that's in place. Just wanted to highlight from our post-16 tutor. So we have a post-16 tutor within the virtual school that supports our NEET young people to re-engage back into education. And again, just a huge success really here just before and during COVID, that we still continued with that work, and some of our young people actually during COVID achieved a number of qualifications, either through functional skills or other certificates, directly through the virtual school. We sat those with those young people. Attainment, obviously very different this year. Although we have got data in there DfE guidance is that schools weren't required to submit. There'll be no national data. There'll be the comparison data from last year. So it does look very different to what it has done previously. But I hope you will all agree that our children haven't missed out. They have attained really well, and will continue to, you know, support where there is any gaps. But the data is kind of a lot more brief than what it previously has been with regard to that comparison data to previous years and national. Year 12, 13 and 14, again, some real positives about progress. I know there has been some concerns around NEET and what that means, and just to reiterate on that as well, I had a meeting today, and year 12 and 13 were currently on 6.3% NEET, whereas in previous years we've had 16% NEET at the same times at this period of time at the start of the academic year. So again, a real positive that we're seeing, and we've got a couple of our young people that are secured places and moved on to university, lots that are moving on to level 3 courses or gone on to employment, so some real successes there as well. Update on attendance and PEPs, just felt this is important to say where we're up to at this point in time. So the return to school, again, as of today, from September to date, we're currently on 92% attendance for our cared for, and for our personal educational plans. So far we've got 55% of PEPs completed already this half term, with a number of others booked in between now and Christmas. So we're hoping to have a minimum of 84% completed. We're aiming for 90% at least completed by Christmas to make sure that we have got clear planning for education. A key focus is obviously on gaps on learning, our mental health and wellbeing, and return to school and transition. Strategic priorities, which I've outlined in there, I've put strategic and operational. So we are implementing a governing body as an extra measure of challenge. That's going to be implemented. We're going to have the first meeting before December. Working with council leaders to ensure development of apprenticeship opportunities. That's been ongoing for a little while, and we'll still continue to work on that. Development of a pupil council voice. We're working with our participation team to look at how our young peoples can support with strategic developments, and working alongside council members with those frontline visits. Last time there was it was a request for around the national tutoring programme, so I've just put some information there. I'm not going to read all of that out to yourselves, but the national tutoring programme is out there, and we have made it available to our schools and give them every opportunity to link into that. It's a government programme where the schools have to express an interest directly with the DfE. So it doesn't come through to us, but what we have done is made sure that we have been linked into that. We've attended webinars, and we're also linking the virtual school team so that when we're in PEPs, we're asking the questions of if a school has expressed an interest, is part of the national tutoring programme, how are our children linking into that? And these are just some other interventions currently across Cheshire East. Mark Bailey, Head of Services, is leading on these. We've invited him to our next corporate parenting workstream group to actually go through these in a little bit more detail with us about what does that mean and how can we support our cared for children with some of these programmes that are currently in place. Some are Cheshire East programmes and some are government initiatives, but just wanted to share with you some of the things that are out there at the moment that we are making sure that our schools are aware of and are linked into. And thank you very much. If there is any questions.
Thank you so much, Laura. I have to say that I have read all of this report, every page, and I found it really, really well written report. It was excellent in terms of it was so clear in explaining things. I thought the section on pupil premium was really great, you know, because it's sometimes people don't understand how that all works, and that was really, really clear. I love the section on the staffing and how you're looking after staff and the wellbeing meetings you're having with them. The case studies you know, we always love to read case studies at Corporate Parenting, and there's some really good case studies in there, so they were really good. And again, the information is really clear on PEPs and how they're working. I did have some questions, but you've actually answered them all in your presentation. I was just really pleased. I did know this, but I wanted everybody to hear what our current NEET figures were, because I think that's absolutely an amazing achievement to get that to 6.3%. But you know, when you look at the Corporate Parenting annual report, you know, it was high, a lot higher than that, and that's really positive that's come down so much. So yeah, you know, again, some really good results coming from having these personal tutors as well. So, you know, well done on a fantastic report, and thank you so much for all of your hard work. Does anyone else have any points to make? Councillor Borman.
Hi, Laura. Yes, really well done. At the same point as you in a way, Kath, as a teacher, you know how difficult it was. You always felt guilty that you hadn't quite spent the pupil premium, you know, had you put it in the right place, had you, you know, made full use of it. So the focus on that in here and the way that you're helping schools to target it and use it really effectively, I think that is really to be welcomed. That's great. Being a cynic, though, I do have a query about the government providing these high quality teachers, you know, from, I mean, they may be absolutely hotshot, I don't know, but how do we know? How do we know that the money that's going to them is probably significant? And I just wanted to know how we know what the level, what the quality is like. Do you sample it? Do you see what sort of materials, what sort of input?
I suppose it's going to be different depending on, so is that the national tutoring programme, I believe that there's over 30 providers, so the schools, they express an interest directly to about what they want to DFE, and DFE then assign a provider that's appropriate to that, so it doesn't come through us. Yeah. But I'm sure that we will be part of working with our schools about what does that look like and what they are putting in, but it does come directly through. With regard to the academic mentoring, that's slightly different, so we have got a direct link into there. I believe Mark Bailey is going to be, by the end of next week, we'll be able to find out what schools have linked up to that, but that is through one specific provider, so it might be that we're able to have a little bit more oversight in the content and what that includes. Yeah. Some of those initiatives, the literacy and the numeracy, that's our initiatives, that's things that we are running as a Cheshire East, so we do have oversight of those, and we can ensure the quality in that. And then obviously with regards to the virtual school, we're funding the tutoring where we source the tutors, and I know very kindly, Councillor Bullman, you've offered to do some tutoring with our young people. I haven't
done any yet, but I will. Yeah.
Yeah, we are in the process of setting that up. So, you know, those are the sorts of things that we're doing to assure ourselves, to make sure that if the schools are linking into those, that's up to those schools to link into those, but we're making sure that we're also adding into that our tutors and then measuring the impact through their PEPs, yeah. Termly, to say, well, what, and that's where that and so what comes in, that we want to develop this year further, to say, okay, so they've had this maths tutoring, and so what has been the impact of that, and actually truly measure that. So we've adapted our PEPs as well slightly in the last 12 months, where there is now a specific target. So every term, schools, as well as applying for the funding, we've made it so that they have to measure the impact termly, and therefore we can be, you know, we can hold them to account really and challenge each term. So it's not just here's some money, then it's not measured. Actually, it's accounted for every term. So every term they have to apply for that, and we measure the impact so that we can, you know, we can hold them account to that really. So.
That's really good. And really, it should in some ways be easier to evaluate than ever before, in that so much is done online and is therefore recorded, isn't it, and saved. So that might help with that, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And I think some of that as well, I suppose it's about, you know, I've been having conversations over the last few days of some things aren't always achievable as a target, you know, as a grade. Some of the impact that we see is far greater than that. It could be around a child, you know, a young person's self-esteem, their confidence, you know, and that's why we try to put the case studies in this time, because sometimes it's not a measurable figure. No. You know, our children are they're all unique. And therefore, you know, some of the impact is not always going to be, okay, they've moved from a 4 to a 5, they've moved from a 5 to a 6. Actually, it could just be how they've felt and their confidence. And that is just as important sometimes as that grade, isn't it?
Of course it is, yeah. Thank you.
Excellent. Yeah, and I was going to mention about Councillor Foreman doing some tutoring. I wasn't sure whether she'd actually managed to do any yet, but I'm sure that's something to look forward to. And I'm also happy to do some as well. If you know, particularly if you ever do get any music students through, then that's my area who need extra help, and English as well. It'd be lovely to work with some of the young people. Are there any other questions from anyone?
And the only other one thing, sorry, I just wanted to add on to, I just wanted to echo around the virtual aspects of what's happened, you know, throughout. And this, we've also seen a real positive in that as well. We've had some really fantastic feedback from our young people who've been engaged with PEPs virtually where they might not have been before. And also through some of our advisors where they're able to attend more, where we've got out of borough, children living in out of borough areas and in the schools. So again, just I wanted to echo what was said there with Kerry, that we, you know, we're also seeing that real positive as well.
Yeah, it's a great thing, isn't it? Because if you know, without the COVID pandemic, if we'd ever sort of brought up the idea of doing a bit more virtual work with our children, it would have felt like a bit of a huge thing to have to try and organise and put in place. But it's had to happen, and from that it's become a real positive, I think. You know, with engagement, you know, what's they say, necessity is the mother of invention, if you like, sort of a bit like that. So yeah, it is really really positive. So yeah, brilliant. And I noticed, you know, all of these service objectives from 1920, you've got all of those as being achieved, apart from one, which is the self-evaluation, I believe, self-assessment tool, which is just some progress. So I suggest, I can see from the comments in here that that's still ongoing and that things are moving forward. So again, you know, really, really great report. So thanks for that, Laura. Well, if there are no more questions, I'm going to suggest that we accept this report, note this report, and unless anybody has any objections, I'm going to take it that we all agree to receive this report. Carol, you've still got a legacy hand up, I believe. I don't know who it was that invented the legacy hand, but it's just a great term. I think it was Jane Burns in a meeting that we went to. It's just, it's kind of stuck.
I prefer historical hand.
Yeah, legacy hand, historical hand, yeah, it's great. Okay, right, thank you. So that report is accepted, noted. Thanks very much. Thanks, Laura. Okay, moving on. Our next, I believe, is the Adoption Counts report. We've got two reports on the adoption. We've got adoption. Is it the adoption panel 6 monthly report? First of all, do we have anybody presenting that? Is that you, Kerry?
Hi, no, it's hi, yeah, it's myself, Nicola, and Gail is also here from Adoption Counts. Is it okay if I actually do them the other way around? The annual report,
yeah. So you want to start with the let me just find that one. So just for members, that we're going to do item 8 first, the adoption annual report, followed by item 7, the adoption panel chairs report. Yes,
that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay, so item 8 then.
Hello everybody, and thank you for inviting us this evening. Gail and I are here to present the adoption annual report, which is about the data within this report is from the 1st of April 2019 to the 31st of March 2020. So the data we'll be talking to you about tonight is relevant for that period of time. So I just wanted to go through a few of the highlights in the report, and then at the end, if anybody has any questions, then Gail and I are really happy to answer those. So one of the definite strengths, I think, between the Adoption Counts agency and Cheshire East is that there are really good working relationships at all levels. We have a really robust tracking system in place whereby all children from a really early point in proceedings, we meet with Cheshire East colleagues on a monthly basis to talk about the plans and have a very joint up approach in terms of care planning, which really assists kind of getting the right outcomes and the right plans in place for all of our children. Last year, we had 16 children adopted and we placed 19 children in their adoptive placements. And those figures are pretty consistent with the numbers of children that we placed the year before that. We had 17 children adopted the previous year and 16 children placed. So we're achieving the same sorts of figures for adoption for children from year to year. One of the things that has changed slightly.
Oh, hold on, you've muted yourself, Nicola, somehow. Okay.
I don't know how I did that, sorry. Where did you hear up to?
It was the number of children from the previous year you were comparing.
Okie dokie. Yes, so the numbers have been pretty consistent in terms of the children who were adopted and have plans for adoption over the past couple of years. One of the things that we have seen a bit of a difference in over the past year is we have seen an increase in the overall timescales for children being adopted and placed. They have risen slightly in comparison to years before. But as you can see by the narrative in the report for individual children, a high number of children that have joined adopted families in the past year have had quite complex health and development needs. And that has meant that in terms of finding adopters for them, it's been really, really important that we find adopters who've got the right skills to meet those children's needs on a lifelong basis. And that children who are sometimes considered older in terms of adoption or come from large sibling groups or have quite complex health or development needs are children who can wait slightly longer to younger children without those needs. So overall, it's a really, really positive outcome that we managed to place those children with their adoptive families who can meet their needs on a lifelong basis. So just to kind of provide a bit more detail about a couple of the children, for example, there was a 6-year-old little girl who was registered blind, who for the first 4 years of her life had experienced significant neglect and abuse within her birth family and had global development delay. So her measures were she had an A1 measure of 627 days and an A2 measure of 315 days, which is well above the targets that we would hope to achieve for children. But actually, because her needs were so complex, it was so important to find the family who could meet her lifelong needs. And it was a really, really positive outcome for that little girl that we did. And I'm really, really happy to say that that little girl has flourished within her adopted family and is doing really, really well. So if we look at it from that perspective, then actually it's really important to make sure that our plans are right, despite having an overall effect on some of the timelines for the children.
That's brilliant. Can I just interrupt you there for a second, Nicola? Can you just give us a bit of clarification between A1 and A2 and what those mean?
Yeah, of course I can. The A1 and the A2 figures are the two figures that we are judged up on by Ofsted and nationally. So the A1 figure is the average time between a child coming into care and moving in with their adoptive family. And the measure that we try and meet for that is 426 days. Currently, the England average is 486 days. So we are just kind of on the measure for meeting that this year. The year before that, our A1 figure was 338 days. So when I say it's risen slightly, that does demonstrate that. The A2 figure is the average time between the local authority receiving court authority to place a child. So that's when the court grants a placement order for the child. and the local authority deciding on a match with their adopted family. And the measure for that is 121 days. And currently the National England average for that is 201 days. So last year the A2 measure was 231 days. So it is slightly kind of above where it has been in previous years.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for that clarification. That's great.
So another really positive outcome is in the last year we placed 74% of our children with adopters who have been approved by Adoption Counts, instead of placing children with adopters who could be living nationwide over the country. And the reason why that's such a positive is because obviously we spend a great deal of time assessing our families, getting to know them very, very well, and that means that we have a really good level of knowledge about their skills, capabilities, and also some of their vulnerabilities that they might have, that they might need further support with. And we also spend a great deal of time with our children, making sure that we have the right plans for them. So when we know our children very well and we know our adopters very well, and we can place in-house, then that gives us the best chance for overall outcomes for our children. Because obviously if a family or a child were need to have support from Cheshire East and we had placed them down in Cornwall, then obviously it's far, far easier to provide support to a more localised placement than it is to one that's further afield. Last year we also placed 2 children in fostering for adoption placements. Again, that's a really, really good outcome for children, as it means children join their adoptive families at a much, much earlier point in their lives, and their families are actually their foster carers for a period of time before the placement then converts to one of adoption. So really, really positive that children can spend that additional time with their family and not have to have another move of placement. Last year as well, there was also a slight increase in the number of children who have a plan of adoption from the year before. There were 23 children who have a plan of adoption, and there were 25 children where the court granted placement orders. So again, it's really, really positive that that's the case. Another thing that we were really, really pleased to see this past year is that the quality of reports has improved. The Child Permanence Report is the document that the child will have when they are older and they are wanting to learn more information about their birth family and the reasons for them becoming adopted. So it's always been a really, really important report for us to try and get right, so the children have the level of information they need written in the right way to answer their questions overall. It's something that we spent a lot of time on trying to get right and developing, so it was really, really good news to see that the overall quality of reports has improved significantly. Another positive is our adoption support service, and sometimes we have families coming to us who say that they've made the decision to come forward with Adoption Counts because they've looked at the support that we actually offer for our adopters, and that's been a definite kind of positive for them in choosing us as an agency. We offer high levels of ongoing support in a variety of different ways, signposting, support and advice through universal services. We also have a fantastic adoption psychology service who are involved in the child's journey at all different points along the way and can offer advice to our colleagues in Cheshire East and also our adopted families about the children's needs. We also run a variety of training programmes and individual therapeutic support for families and children that can be accessed via the Adoption Support Fund. So that's another real positive. We also have a number of ongoing developments in terms to adoption practice. The past year we have had a working group which is looking at issues of race and ethnicity for our children in terms of adoption. There has been some research issued by the University of East Anglia in terms of transitions, moving children from foster care to adopters, what really helps that process for children. So we've been involved in trying to embrace some of those practice principles. We run adoption picnics, and they continue to be a really successful matching method for us. Over the past year, we've had 76 children who we've profiled and featured at those events, and 85 adopted families have come along to those, and that's resulted in 20 children being placed. So that opportunity for prospective adopters to actually meet children face to face and bring them to life is a really positive outcome in terms of enabling some of our children who might wait longer to join their adoptive families. Overall, in terms of our adopter approvals, again, we approved 110 adopters in the past year, and that's an increase from the year before. We had 85 approved the last year, and that's in a context of a national adopter shortage as well. So it's really positive that we've been able to approve that many people, because again, that is a really good outcome for our children if we can place within house adopters. So that's about everything we wanted to say about the annual report. Moving on to the panel.
Should we pause in case there are any questions there? Because I've got a couple on that particular report. Are you okay with that? Just have a little.
Yeah, that's fine. No worries.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions on this report? I've got a couple of things to raise. Happy to defer to other councillors first. Okay. Right. First of all, yeah, again, it's a good report, and I really like, you talk about the the delay with some, and some children outside that targeted figure of the the A1 and A2 measures, but then you give a little breakdown of reasons and the children and why they might have taken longer, and I think that's so helpful for us as members on the committee, because it really makes it much more personal, if you like, makes it brings it to life a bit more. When you're looking at figures all the time, it doesn't mean very much, but seeing these, you talk about all the children that have had more complex cases, and I found that really interesting and really helpful. Makes the report very engaging, so thank you for that. Couple of questions. Page 10 of the report, I've made a note, which is 140 on the agenda pack. What was that one? Oh yeah, this table, the Adoption Support Fund applications. I noticed that Cheshire East is quite easily the highest there of all of the other authorities in the partnership. Is there a particular reason for that?
I think I can answer this one, Chair. It's Gail here.
Thanks, Gail.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting question, and one that we've perhaps grappled with as well in terms of finding the answers. I think historically, Cheshire East, before we became a regional adoption agency, did have a high number of adoptive families who were being supported using the additional adoption support fund, and so we've inherited some of those. We also have to acknowledge that the demographics of Cheshire East is that it is an affluent area, and as such, I would say that they're, as adoptive parents, they're very able to advocate for their child's needs, and therefore the assessments that we do with them, they're very clear about what level of support they require for their family, and also there is some positive outcomes that they are very much wanting to have the best long term for their child. So some of those applications are over a period of time, and I think we also have to acknowledge that there are some providers within your area that are very skilled and able as well at delivering the services. So some of the adopters do note that, and therefore request that provider delivers to their child.
Brilliant. That's a great answer. Thank you. While we're on that subject of support, I think I read somewhere, is there a facility for adopters to actually meet together, you know, form sort of support groups amongst themselves? Is that sort of encouraged? Because that's often really an important way of getting peer support, isn't it? People who are in the same position.
Absolutely, I would agree with that wholeheartedly. We do have, through Adoption UK, we have an adopt a voice element within Adoption Counts, whereby they form a group of adopter champions, and what we do is we work in partnership with them to help them assist us in developing our practice, but most importantly in terms of peer support. They do, or they did before lockdown hit, they operated regular walks whereby they got together as a group of adopters with their families and children and just talk through any issues that there were, and in a very informal way. So that's a really important part of the peer support that they get.
Absolutely, yeah, I think that's really, and it's, you know, it's the same sort of thing we're looking at with our, you know, foster carers as well. It's that peer support which is so important. I mean, to me, one of the best ways is a closed Facebook group, you know, that people can just bang messages on, you know, or just post something if they're having a bad day. So
absolutely, and that's definitely delivered through our adopter champions. So you're absolutely right, that's something that they've really benefited from.
Thank you. And again, with this the adoption psychology service. Now there was some talk. I remember when we spoke about this last time that the funding was coming to an end for that, which was a bit of a concern. Have we managed to secure funding for that to continue, or is it coming to an end?
I would like that to be more positive news, but unfortunately, the funding is secured still up until the end of March 2021, but we're still in consultation with Greater Manchester Foundation Trust, because obviously that's 4 of our local authorities, plus we are in consultation with the Cheshire East CAMS team to see if there can be continued funding. I have to say that the board are very keen for that to continue, because it's seen as a very high level support, but also it offers a huge bonus for preventative work as well, to try and reduce the pressure further down the line on the CAM service. So we are, that still is a work in progress, but we're very hopeful that we can continue that.
Absolutely. I mean, I hope so, because it's such a great service to help to prevent breakdown of placement, isn't it? And also helping, you know, adoptive parents to bond with their children, and to, you know, particularly when they're older, you know, if they take in somebody who's older, you know, that's a really important service.
Absolutely, Chair, I agree.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Any other questions on that one? Okay, right, shall we move on to the next, and then we'll receive them both together at the end. Thanks very much.
Sorry, I didn't put my hand up. I'd just like to say I think the champions, the adopted champions, is a really great idea, and I think it would reassure people, wouldn't it? You know, if it's somebody who is an adoptive parent who's there for you, you know, that sounds like a really great idea.
Yeah,
just well done, very well done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so the panel chair report was written by one of our new panel chairs this year, who is called Anne Tully. So basically, just some of the highlights from this report are about the robust systems and panel processes that have been put in place. We have 3 panel chairs who regularly chair panel alongside a vice chair, and a dedicated panel advisor who has an independent role, as is not involved in any of the case management of the matches or approvals that will be brought to panel. So all of those colleagues work together with the agency, and that helps to ensure quality assurance and that agency standards are met, which again has a really positive outcome in ensuring that the majority of items that come to panel are fit to be presented to panel, and any concerns about any of the matches or approvals have been ironed out before coming to panel. So panels are held every week, and there are overall 52 active panel members. We are continuing to recruit panel members. It's always something that is high on the agenda, as we'd like to have a really wide and diverse panel membership, and I think we've always been conscious that we would like to have greater diversity in terms of our panel membership. So again, we are recruiting constantly to try and ensure that's the case. A lot of business is taken to panels, as you can see from the statistics and the numbers. They are really busy, which is good news. And that the majority of feedback from those attending panels is very positive. We do tend to get more feedback from the adoptive families and other professionals that attend panel as opposed to social workers. So that is definitely something that we are trying to be more creative about how we get that feedback from social workers. Again, this year's report will flag that in terms of timeliness, there has been timelines that are slightly longer than sometimes we would ideally like. And again, there is an ongoing piece of work to look at the assessment timescales and the matching timescales overall. So we can try and continue to work on improving timeliness, both in assessments and for matches. Again, sometimes there are really good reasons as to why things may have taken slightly longer, and there's a narrative in terms of that. And if that's the right decision for that particular child and family, then I think that's really important. But if there are occasions where that could be improved upon, then that's definitely something that we would want to look at further. So that's an ongoing piece of work. So those are the highlights really from the report that I wanted to flag. So if anybody's got any questions, be very happy to answer those.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions they wish to ask Nicola on that? No, I'm beginning to suspect that there's nobody else in this meeting.
Your chair.
Are you there, Jim? Good. It's really strange just looking at these grey circles and thinking, has everybody fallen asleep? Okay, I have got a couple of points just to make, if you don't mind. First one, which I'm assuming is a typo. On page 3, the annual panel training, it says the last one took place on the 20th of November 2020. I'm assuming that should be 2019.
Yes, yeah, it should be, yes.
Okay. So just that, this just needs correcting. The other one I wanted to ask about the independent members. I mean, it says about what the panel is made up of and how many members there are. When you have independent members, how are they sourced and appointed? What sort of methods go through, and what sort of people would they be?
I know that councillors have often attended our panels, and certainly I think we do have, I think there's about 4 or 5 councillors that are actually independent members as for our overall panel membership. Again, we would try and recruit people to the role. So they're not advertised formally. I think sometimes it's by word of mouth as well. And people can express interest if they would wish to become an independent panel member. And then they can have conversations with our agency advisor and panel chairs in relation to the role and responsibilities and what that would actually entail and how many panels would need to be attended each year.
And what sort of, is there any criteria? Do people have to be, from, a certain background, or, any sort of training or education that they may have need to be on an adoption panel, or is it just open to anybody?
We would welcome anybody. It's about kind of having a real diversity of all life experiences on our panel membership board. Quite a lot of people do come forward because they have had some experience of adoption or worked with children and families, and I think that's always really beneficial to kind of have that background experience. And full training is offered, so all panel members would attend training about the role of panel, the purpose of panel, and to make sure that they're fully appraised before coming along to their first panel. They also have opportunity to observe several panels before actually being a quorate panel member as well.
Brilliant. And so Just to clarify, because I know Councillor Bournemouth was asking, you know, she's now on the fostering panel. Is the idea that you have a core number, you have a number of people who are available, and then for each case, people are selected, or there's a smaller number who actually attend each meeting? Is that right?
Yeah, it's a smaller number who would attend each meeting, so people would know in advance which panel they were due to attend, and usually it's a certain number of panels per year. And in order to be quorate, you need a representation, you need a social work representative, you need an independent chair, who can also count as the independent member. Sometimes medical advisors will attend panel. We have adopted parents who will come along and act as members of panel. So each panel will be composed of up to 5 different members who will all have an input into the decision making of that panel.
That's great. That's clear, because I think sometimes people are just a bit unsure about how that works. So that's probably why when Councillor Bournemouth was saying she'd seen all the dates for the fostering, that's probably why she only has to attend a few of those within the year. And I noticed, did you say that you would like to have a birth parent as part of the panel, which will be a great thing to have? Not managed to do that yet.
No, I think it's one of those things that we would be, it would be absolutely amazing to have that perspective. Yeah. But I think, again, probably it's not the easiest of roles for the majority of our birth parents. I think that's something that we would like to try and secure, but obviously it's got to be right for that birth parent.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah, brilliant. Okay, thank you for that, Nicola. And are there any other questions from members on that particular report? Again, it's very helpful and very interesting.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and again, the recommendations which are good. It says about trying to get much more diverse. The independent panel, getting from good backgrounds. And was there? I can't remember which report it was in about the advertising and the recruitment, and really trying to get across the message that anybody can be an adopter. And I know I did a press release a couple of months ago about trying to encourage men to do it. Whether they're single men or whether they're in partnership. And that there really are no, saying that you've got targeted, to have gay people, to have people with BAME background, and it's a great, getting that message out is really important, isn't it? That people seem to think to adopt, you've got to be a normal heterosexual couple that live in that have a healthy income and a great background, etc. But it's really, there are all sorts of people, aren't there, who can become adopters. So getting that message out, would be great, and I know there's been some work on that already, so look forward to more of that.
That's great.
Yeah, so thank you very much. So those two, we'll take those two together. Again, just to note and consider those reports, which I believe we have done. Is there anybody not agreeing that we should receive those reports? I'll just take a sense of the room. I don't have anybody waving at me. I have no idea whether you're all still awake. Great. Okay. So no objections to that. So those two reports are duly noted. And I believe that brings us to the end of the agenda.
Chair,
yes.
I'm awake. I'd like to say, when I read all this, I thought it read very similarly to what we'd read last year, which, considering, I don't mean they'd copied last year's, but the positivity and considering the time we're in, I thought it was really good results that we were in this position.
Absolutely, yes. Thank you, Councillor Buckley. That's true. Although don't forget that a couple of these reports are only up to the end of March 2020. So I would envisage that the ones that we have next year will be will certainly show the impact of the pandemic on them. But it will feel, when we do receive those reports, which I imagine will be sort of November next year, COVID might seem like a bit of a distant memory. So we'll just have to bear that in mind, that the reports we get next year may be considerably different, with good reason.
I was thinking more of the you know, the school and
Oh,
the,
absolutely, yeah.
and the keeping in contact with the cared for children. That was all very positive.
Absolutely, and we know that, you know, staff have been working really well to keep that contact up. So it's been brilliant, and yes, thank you to all staff for all of their hard work over this time, because we know it's not easy doing that. Okay, so that concludes the meeting. I don't believe we have a date for the next one yet, but I'm sure you'll receive your invite in due course. So thank you everybody for attending, and have a safe week.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks very much, everyone.